Hey everybody, thanks for checking out SongsAreForSinging.com, our very first video interview courtesy of Google Hangouts. And I am excited to welcome to the website my friend Ross King. Ross, tell everyone hello.
Hello everyone.
As you can see, Ross is, well, he's in it right now. He's there in the studio. You can see a guitar with a capo and a piano, and there's cables everywhere.
Goodness, I didn't clean. There's a black cloth here that I hang over the window to do sonic things. So it's awesome.
Really?
Yeah, it's high tech.
Did you get that cloth from Musician's Friend or somewhere like that?
No, I think I might have got it from like Bed Bath & Beyond or something like that. Did you see on my Twitter my homemade reflection filter that I made from a plastic bucket? Hold on. I was told that I should have a reflection filter for my microphone hanging behind the microphone.
Right.
So
yeah.
I built this. This is a bucket for chlorine for our pool, and I put some old Orlex in it, and I hang it from the ceiling with this, and then I take this string and I pull this to the mic, and it makes it all tight but kind of free flowing.
Really?
Kind of floating, yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably not. Here's a surprise. It may not be as good as the ones that you spend $100 on.
You never know.
You never know, but sometimes you do.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying things out, and I basically was just like A-Bing a version of my vocal takes with the mic without anything on it, because I'm just in my office, like I'm not in like a real quality studio, so I'm worried about the vocals being the right, just all the sonic properties and all that. And I have a lot of because the way my office is structured with a lot of clutter and a couch and some shelves, it's got a lot of like sort of accidental diffusion and reflection and stuff. But I'm right in the middle of my room, just singing at a wall 4 or 5 feet away, and that's not ideal. So this reflection filter is supposed to do reflections that. So
it's working though compared to the other one.
I A-B'd it with my producer, and he preferred it. So
that's cool. So we're here to talk about your new record that's coming out very soon. But I want to tell folks, if you didn't know this, guys, the way that I met Ross was basically through his worship records. So I knew of Ross's music, his singer-songwriter stuff, years and years and years ago.
That's several piles of years you just put together there.
Well, considering how much trouble we've both had getting Google Hangouts to work, I think it's probably.
That's true.
Got to be honest about how old we are. Actually, when I was newly married, church I worked at, the youth pastor there did a musical based off of one of Ross's records, a record called Sullivan's Flaw.
Yeah.
And Big Quiet Truth, actually. There were a couple of songs from Big Quiet Truth as well.
Right.
And so I was in charge of the band. We decided to do a live band.
Really? I don't think I knew this.
You knew this.
I've forgotten because I think when I met you, there's it's like
you were kind of scared. I mean, you kind of knew there was. I mean, you thought, well, here's a contender here that I'm meeting.
Sure. Let's say it's that. No, but you know how the old joke about you see your teacher when you're at Walmart and she doesn't belong there. I think I have a version of our friendship when I didn't know you at all, and you were just telling me, hey, I like your music, and I'm going, hey, thanks, and I was always surprised to meet people who wrote songs that were good at it, that lived in Lufkin, Texas or whatever, right? And so I think probably in my mind and that's back to tying you to Lance and all that group, which there's a lot of different paths that my brain goes down to.
So you had one of those, can anything good come out of Lufkin? So it's very biblical.
I feel like when you said that, you've heard that before. That's why you said that. You feel like that was practiced in your mind. Isn't that like when you drive into Lufkin, isn't that what it says under Lufkin? Anything good come out of Lufkin? Chamber of Commerce, brought to you by the very ashamed, humiliated Chamber of Commerce. Lufkin, we're just kidding. God bless you, Lufkin.
I've said this many times about myself to people, but I'll say it to you too. Why are we not writing sitcoms, you and I?
I don't know. I don't know. Because they can't afford us?
Is
that it?
I don't know.
Because they're watching this video going, whoa, here's a contender.
That's right.
Look out.
They call that a callback. That's very nice. Yeah. So
on the outtakes of this, I'll tell you, I actually don't write sitcoms. I write a single sort of Creed Bratton, Jerry Gergich type character that I wish I could just say, hey, here's a character to insert into your ensemble.
Right.
And
that makes sense. Yeah.
This will up your game because you're just focusing on the Amy Poehler and the Steve Carell. I'm going to give you some side characters that have a quirk,
which is the real beauty of.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got a couple of those I'll tell you about later, but I'm just going to tease that now.
Okay. Well, because you came to Lufkin and you played a show at St. Cyprian's Episcopal Church. It was an outdoor show. It was you and Stacy and Craig Weaver, I believe.
I don't remember this at all.
Yeah,
not because I'm such a world traveler, but because I'm just old. I don't remember this at all.
But I remember, so we did those songs off those 2 records, and they went great. The musical was great.
I've still never seen it. I've heard there's video, and I've never seen it. Lance.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's very good. I mean, storyline's great. I mean, Lance, the guy who wrote it, did a great job.
Yeah, Lance is great.
But then, not long after, maybe even during that time, I had started a worship website, kind of like this one, although it wasn't nearly the blog form. It was called Worship Notes, and it was more of a worship magazine. And so what would happen is...
Right. I interviewed with you for that.
Right, but it started as I actually just started reviewing your worship record, so I would assume that would be To Make God Famous, Volume 1.
Probably so. Gosh.
No, you know what? I might have reviewed a Breakaway. It would have been a Breakaway one before that.
So like 99? We're talking like that?
Yeah,
that long ago?
Yeah. It was probably the blue covered Breakaway record. I don't remember which one.
That was Spirit Moves.
Yeah, but and it had gosh, what did that record have on it?
Oh, I mean, from me, it had Greatest. This was my first real good worship. Honestly, real decent.
Great As Your Love was the one.
Me with Me. Who May Have Sinned. And then John Sherrill was on it with a couple of great tunes. In You. Mm-hmm. He had we wrote a song called "Consume Me" together. What was the other one?
What happened to those guys who led on that record? Man, they just disappeared.
I'm right here. You're looking at. I'm right here, Todd.
Anyway,
this interview's over. Click.
But what was so interesting so I would, just to give a little more background, I would review Ross's records on Worship Notes, and what began to happen was I would get these on occasion when I would review the record. If I kind of got something right, in other words, if I noticed something about a record, or I made a comment about, I think this song is really good because of this reason, when I would land on something that was actually true of maybe how you had intended it, mm-hmm. you would email me and just say, hey, that's really cool. That's so great that you noticed that. And so as each record came out, then we did interviews, and so we became friends. And then for those of you who may be new to songsforsinging.com, Ross produced my first record, my first worship record, and so we became friends through that. And so Ross has made, how many worship records have you made with Breakaway included?
Breakaway included, I did 3 with them, and then I did To Make God Famous, and then Volume 2 of that. So that's 5, and then Soul Speak is 6, and then I did the EP about a year and a half ago. So that would be 7, or I guess 6.5 if you count EPs.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah.
And so why don't you tell people though? So Soul Speak. So the break between Soul Speak and the EP, something kind of changed. Yeah, and it changed your musical career. It didn't change; it just an added component. So explain to people first of all what the last 2 or 3 years have been.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that I don't have any problem saying that. I mean, I never want to go back and say, hey, my old records are terrible or something, because then if somebody really loved them or was changed by something, you're insulting their journey or whatever. So, but I will say that I wrote worship songs by myself almost exclusively for all of my songwriting career, and I probably was never a guy who fought really hard for a melody to be great. I would focus on lyrics and trying to say something sort of provocative or new or something that I felt like hadn't been said. Like I used to say that I wrote worship songs in the spaces. I would approach a worship song saying what needs to be said that I haven't heard said a lot. Or if I was at some kind of an event where someone was teaching or something and I heard them talking about some concept, that Christians maybe should sing about, and I would search my mind, for a current popular song or even an old song or whatever. And if I couldn't think of one that I really liked, then I'd write it down and say, okay, that's going to be a song, at some point, and I'd write that. But I didn't really fight for melody when I did that. I just was like, the primary focus of these songs was lyrics. And so I think if you go back and find fans of mine who say, oh, what's your favorite Ross King song and why? They would list some song with really good words, but those songs aren't going to be like super emotionally compelling, and these days as we listen to worship music, has just gotten really beautiful and melodic, and I don't know that it's always lyrically where it needs to be. I think you and I agree that lyrically worship music can tend to be a little bit
terrible.
It can be, yes, it can be a little terrible. So not overall, not all of it, but a lot of it, sure. But melodically, it's really strong, and so I started noticing that, man, if you write a compelling melody, that's just another. And this is elementary songwriting. This isn't rocket science. But if you write a compelling melody, an emotional melody, that's just going to take your great lyrics even farther. I've spent the last 3 years or so, I've been trying to write commercially. Like, I've intentionally been writing in sort of the Christian music Nashville scene with other writers, doing a lot of co-writing, getting a lot of critiquing. About a year and a half ago, I signed with a publisher out there, and now I'm assigned to sort of write for these purposes, and I have a quota of, hey, you need to write this many songs, and we need to keep them at a certain level of quality. And so I have a lot of gatekeepers around me, and that's just been, it's been immeasurably valuable to my art, just because, and you and I, you know this, in case people don't know, you and I write together, a lot, and I know you would agree that the collaborative thing is huge. Your record had 4 songs that we co-wrote, and I don't know if you co-wrote with anyone else on there, but I know you're co-writing now, right, a decent amount, and I'm writing, if I'm writing, 5 songs a month or something, one of them is written me all by myself, and the others are all collaborations. So
number one, your ability, I think, to craft phrases and turn a phrase has gotten even sharper. So I think in the pop dynamic or whatever, you've been able to kind of shine there. And
well, I think part of that, Todd, is that you live in your own space, and you believe all your own hype and all that, and songwriters are sort of famous for kind of feeling like nobody gets me, and if they just got me, then I would be huge, right? If everyone was as smart as me about me, right, then I would be famous. It's really very sad, but at some level that's true of all of us, that I would write a phrase and kind of maybe be proud of it and be like, attaboy, Ross, you wrote a great phrase, but sometimes it didn't land, and I remember talking to Jimmy Needham, who's become a friend and someone who's been great. He's helped me, and he's let me write songs with him for his records and stuff. And Jimmy said one time, he asked, we were in the middle of a song, and he said, "Is that as intuitive to them as it is to us?" And I said, "Who is?" And he said, "Here we are in this song, and we're 3 hours into a co-write, and so there's a lot of intuition about what's being said. They're 2 minutes into the song. Do they know as much as we know? And are we assuming that they know more than they do?" And I was like, wow, that was mind-blowing for me to hear that and to have to ask that question. And so I think that's part of it is, when I turn a phrase now, I'm not just saying, hey, how clever is it? Hey, does it sound cool? It's more, is this accessible? Is this, are people really going to get it? And sometimes you've got to be less clever or less interesting to be more accessible, based on who you're trying to reach and why.
So you've had, the past 3 years as a writer, so the 2 things that have been so great is, number one, you've had some success relatively early on. So we read books sometimes about guys who write and write for 20 years and never get a cut, and they live in obscurity, and that's what they do. But you've got, number one, you've got some cuts, and even an old song of yours that you wrote by yourself, Clear the Stage, ended up on Jimmy Needham's record. Right. He toured under that album title. But the second thing that you've done, it's been real interesting, is you've kind of brought that sort of co-writing thing back home. So you haven't moved to Nashville, you've stayed in Texas, stayed there in your community, but you've become really pretty intentional about, I'm going to find guys to write with. Tell us now about what kind of led you to do a new worship record. Because how many years did you say it's been?
Soul Speak, the full length was Soul Speak, and came out in the summer of '06. So gosh, we're talking 7 years by the time this one comes out. Now the EP came out, I think it'll be 2 years ago this summer. That sounds right to me. So yeah, I mean,
but the EP, I mean, but the EP started out as something you were just going to do very simply, and you did. I mean, you didn't do a whole lot of production on it, but just kind of, hey, I've written these, I like these, let's see what happens.
Right. Well, what was happening was, go ahead.
No. Go ahead and explain that.
Well, what was happening was, so I'll give this will be the 10-minute story of my songwriting journey from total indie guy to a guy only a little bit less independent than that. But because let's not lie about this. I'm I'm not banking on this deal. I'm having great success and I'm happy. So I did Perhaps I Said Too Much in 2007. Soul Speak in 06. Perhaps I Said Too Much in 07. So I did that thing that I've done a few times in my career where I kind of back to back did a couple of records, and did a house show tour with Perhaps I Said Too Much. Excuse me. That lasted off and on about a year. It was great for me.
I forgot about that. I remember that. Yeah.
Did dozens and dozens of house shows. Just had a blast. I mean, it's awkward and fun, and I sold CDs with a pay whatever you want kind of thing, and it was just great. It was great, and I had a blast. And so came off of that, and I really felt like, man, if there's ever been, and Perhaps I Said Too Much was as far off of me trying to be commercial as I've ever done in terms of, not like, I wasn't mad about it, but I just felt a sort of freedom, like, you know what, I figured out who my audience is for these kind of songs. I'm just gonna be unfettered me. But I was definitely feeling the most free to talk about the kingdom in the way that I wanted to talk about it, that I'd ever felt. And so that was a great time, and I felt really, really happy about that whole record and all that. But I did that record, I did the tour, and I think, and there was a thing that happened right after that where a major, I mean, this isn't bragging because the story has a bad ending, but one of the top 5 Christian musician acts in the world approached me right after that about Clear the Stage, and said, we've recorded this, and it's, we're going to put it on our record. And it was kind of a moment because I was done trying to be CCM guy in every way. And so I kind of got pulled in with that promise, and this is the kind of thing where if this had happened, I wouldn't have gotten rich, but it would have been a game changer in the sense of, this one of those acts that if you get a cut with them, it kind of opens every door for you, And it's and with Clear the Stage being the kind of song that it is, it just had a real potential to be sort of a fire starter, And so anyway, I was geeked about that, and then it sort of fell through. They, a month or two before the record came out, they said, hey, we got some other songs that we feel like need to be in the spot of that song. So they took it out, and I just got really, sadder than I wanted to get. I should have just, if I was so resilient in my faith like I want to be, I'd have been fine, or whatever. But that's kind of my thinking. But instead, I was, just depressed that, my life I'd had this moment of potential glory or whatever. So after that, I just said, I'm done with ever trying to do CCM of any kind, CCM being contemporary Christian music, ever trying to get in the radio, ever trying to be commercial. I'm just going to do what I do, with my fans and all that. So, a few months later, I was approached by this woman named Cindy Wilt Colville, and she had been just a major sort of player in the Christian music business for years, had worked at a couple of major publishing companies, and just knew everybody, and had managed some big artists and all that. And she was into doing some consulting, and Cindy, I met her just randomly at this conference, and she said, hey, we'd known each other years before when I'd had a couple of songs, sort of some one-off publishing stuff with Word, and she said, hey, I remember you, and are you still doing songwriting or whatever? So I said sure, and so I gave her some of my music. She asked for some, and she came back 2 weeks later and was really into it, and gave good critiques, and kind of that sort of thing where she didn't love everything, but she listened to everything, which is always great as a writer to have someone do that. So, long story short, I entered in a relationship with her. She consulted me for about 2 years. I would go out to Nashville, and she would arrange co-writes and meetings and that kind of stuff. And so into that, a year and a half into that, I started getting some cuts, and I signed a publishing deal, and you know, now I'm a millionaire. No, I'm just kidding. No. And now I'm a thousandaire.
That's right.
So,
that's right. And it was your publisher. So I remember last year, you and one of the guys at the publishing company started talking about you doing a record of your own. So you've been very busy with the co-writing thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so much so that really, in doing this record, you've even kind of had to amp your studio gear back up. I mean, you didn't have the big giant studio to do it in. Now, you had done a kids record, you had done a Christmas record,
right?
But tell us a little bit about, because I remember initially you guys were thinking you were going to do a singer-songwriter record because you had enough songs to do that.
Right.
You got to do that. But then you also had, if I understand correctly, this like handful of really strong worship songs, or at least a few finished ones and some great half songs that you wanted to finish out.
Right.
So what made you decide to do the worship record?